Welcome back to Train Signal. You are watching the second part of the video for Lab 2, installing remote installation services and deploying clients. In the last video, I showed you how to use remote installation services to deploy Windows 2000 Professional. So we've done a good job of getting a solution as to deploying client operating systems on PCs in our network. However, this client computer only has the operating system on it. What good is that computer if it does not have some applications that the users would like to use for their regular tasks? So now what we need to do is create a new image that has the operating system as well as the applications that the users use already as part of the image. Now there are various ways of doing this. Like we discussed in the last video, what a lot of administrators do is that they get the operating system deployed on the client, and then once the users log on, automatically they are assigned applications using group policy objects. So that's one way of attacking this problem, where you quickly install the operating system on the client machines, and then as the users log on, the group policy objects will take care of the applications. However, if you want the operating system along with the application to be used as part of a RIS image, well, you can do that as well. In order to do that, we need to actually create a model client. So we will do that in this particular video. At the end of this video, you will learn how to create a complete desktop image that includes the operating system as well as applications, and use remote installation services to deploy that image on client computers. So you will learn how to create a model client with the operating system and applications. Then you will learn how to create client images using RipPrep, also known as Remote Installation Preparation Tool. And then finally, we will deploy a complete client using RipPrep on a machine called Client 1. So what I'm going to do is minimize the screen, and let's have a look at what we have accomplished so far. I'll make our connection to DC1, and then let's check out the Active Directory on DC1. So this will be a quick tour of the Active Directory now, just to show you where we are at this point in our benandbrady.com network setup, and then we'll also take a quick look at the different folders in remote installation services. So going to Active Directory users and computers, what you will observe is that the client got connected to the benandbrady.com network as the computer name administrator1, simply because we logged into the computer as administrator1. Now, how do you control these settings? Like I promised in the last video, I'm going to show you exactly how to control how these computer names are actually generated. To begin with, like I said before, RIS is the only service that I know of that does not put a configuration program in the admin tools. Remember also when we installed it, we installed the RIS service from the control panel, and then to configure it, we did not go to the admin tools and then find a program called RIS over here. We in fact went back to the control panel, and then in there was a link waiting for us to configure remote installation services. Even now, after the remote installation services has been installed, you do not actually see it on the server. Okay, otherwise you would see a program over here that says RIS. In order to configure RIS, you need to go back to Active Directory users and computers, and then go to the domain controllers OU, or wherever your computer account for the RIS server exists. In our case, RIS server has been installed on DC1. So again, the thought process is to go to the computer account where RIS has been installed. In our case, again, it is DC1. So I'm going to right click on this and then go to properties. And then over here, there's an additional tab that has been added called remote install. Okay, this tab is not present on other servers or domain controllers. Let's check that out. Here we have DC2. I'm going to right click on DC2, go to properties, and then over there, as you can see, the remote install tab is missing simply because DC2 is not a RIS server. So I'm going to close this and then go to DC1, right click properties, and now let's learn how to configure the RIS server. So I'm going to click on the remote install tab, and the very first screen shows me the checkbox that you saw before when you were installing RIS. Respond to client computers requesting service. If you uncheck this, the RIS server has been installed, but it will not respond or it will not service any requests from RIS clients. So let's keep that connection on. But this is a good troubleshooting tool. Or you may install RIS server and keep this box unchecked, so that somebody somebody who's not authorized should not be able to actually get the images. That is verified in any case, because when you create a client image, you have to log on as one of the administrators who's authorized to actually do this. However, if you still want to take an extra precaution, you can keep this checkbox unchecked. so that nobody can connect to the RIS server and actually get an image. Now, the only other option that's available over here is verify server, and this is a good way of actually performing a check on the RIS server. It will go through the several folders of RIS server and make sure that our image is okay. So it just finished that, and it says that it did not detect any problems with the remote installation server. When I click on finish, it will restart the RIS service for us. So it's done, and I'm going to close this box. So once again, after installing RIS, it's a good idea to go over here and click on this button just to verify that the RIS server and the image is fine. Then the other button is the show clients button. You can use this button when the clients have connected to see which clients are actually getting the image over here. If you recall, there was a GUID or globally unique ID that was assigned to the client on the client side of the screen, and that will show up over here. So again, if you want to see that, you can. What is important is the advanced settings button. So I'm going to click on that, and let's go through some of these advanced settings. So the first tab is over here is the new clients tab, and by default, like you already know, it's going to generate a client computer name using the username itself. And this can be customized. So let's see how you can do that. In other words, if I do not want to use the username to generate client computers, what other choices do I have? So I'm going to click on the customize button over here, and this opens up a new screen for us. The screen has a legend over here that says that user's first name is given a variable of %first, user's last name is given a variable of %last. In fact, we use the user's logon name, which is given the variable of %username, and so forth. Okay, here's how you read this legend, and here's the format that is currently set. %sign says that this is going to start the format, and here's the number 61. This basically says that take the first 61 characters of the username. So our username was administrator, it took all the characters. Okay, if you just put over here the number 2, it's going to take the first 2 characters, that is AD, from the username administrator. And then this ends that variable, and then over here is a pound sign. This pound sign is the incremental number. This basically says that, well, if 3 clients are connected, then what you do is you increment the number by 1, or if the computer account already exists in a domain, then increment it by 1. This is to ensure that all the computer names are unique in the benandbrady.com network. So again, if you don't like to use the username as the computer name, just simply pick up any other variable such as the first name or the last name, and then you can use that as well. So I'm going to click on the OK button. So this gives you an idea as to how you can customize the username. Again, please remember, customize the computer name using the username. Also, please keep in mind that after the client has connected to the network, you could always go back to the client account and you rechange the name. If you'd like to see that, let me show you exactly how that can be done. What I'm going to do is now connect to our client, which is currently given the name of administrator1. I'm going to right click on the My Computer object, go to properties, and then over here under network identification, I'm going to click on properties, and then over here you can change the computer name from administrator1 to whatever you want. Okay, so we're not going to do that over here, but I just want to let you know that it's not a big deal. You could always go back and change the computer name if you're not happy with the way the computer name was assigned by the RIS server. Now, this is what controls where the computer account will be created. Like if you recall, by default it is created under the default container for clients. I'm going to exit out of the screen just to show you that one more time. By default, all client accounts are created under the container computers, and that's exactly where administrator1 was created. However, if you'd like to change that, you can go to the property sheet of the RIS server, remote install, and then click on advanced settings over here, and I'm back to the screen where I left off from. So by default, it goes to the default directory service location, which is the computer's container. If you do not want it to go somewhere else, if you would like to go, for example, to the same location where the user setting up the client computer is located. In other words, in our case, we logged on as the administrator, and so if you would like the computer account to be created in the user's container, then you can set the setting. So as an example, let's say there is an OU called North Carolina, and the user who's actually using the RIS service has a user account over there. If you would like the computer account to be created in the same location, then you would select this option. Or last but not the least, and this gives you complete freedom to select any other OU that you wish. So over here, I can click on the browse button, and then I can select any of the containers available to me in the benandbrady.com network. So I'm going to cancel out over here and leave it as the default directory service location. Click on apply. And so that was the first tab, the new clients tab. The second tab is the images tab, which basically lists all the images that are present. Currently we just have one image, hence you just see one item. In fact, we're going to create a second image, and once that is done, you will see a second item that is created over here for us. Also, if you recall, there is a separate folder created for each image, and I'm going to take you back over to those folders soon. The next tab is the Tools tab. If you have any third-party software that is used for maintenance or troubleshooting, that can be controlled from here as well. Then the next tab is the Object tab, which basically tells you a little bit more about the object, its unique sequence number and so forth, when it was last updated. Also, it uses what is known as the IntelliMirror service. IntelliMirror is a configuration and change management service in Windows 2000 and Server 2003 technologies. This is used so that on the client you can easily configure environments such as the operating system or the desktop of the client itself, or provide the client with an application such as deploy the application using group policy objects. All this is bundled under what is known as IntelliMirror service technology. And last but not the least is the security settings of this object, namely DC1. So that is the same as it was there before. Nothing has changed. So I'm going to close this box out. And these were the different configuration settings for the RISC server. Again, one of the most important checkboxes is this: respond to client computers requesting service. If you uncheck that, your RISC server will not respond. You can click on this, and then if you also want, you can do the following: do not respond to unknown client computers. This is used in what is known as pre-staging computers. In other words, what you can do is the following: you can go to, for example, the computers container over here and create a computer account in advance. All right, and then you can click on this checkbox that says do not respond to unknown client computers. Once you've done that, then what you need to do is when you log on, only those clients that are known to the Active Directory will get the RISC image. Other clients will not. Okay, usually this box is not checked, but if you would like to have a more secure environment, you can click on this checkbox, and then what will happen is only computers whose accounts are already created will get that particular image. Other clients won't. And the way it knows that this particular computer is the actual one is by using the by using the GUID, also known as a globally unique ID number. And I'm going to show you how to use that as well. So I'm going to close this, and again, you don't have to do this, and I won't follow through on this, but if you want, you can create a new computer object over here, and then you can give it a name. So I'm going to give it a name of, for example, client1, and then over here I'm going to say allow pre-Windows 2000 computers to use this account, just to keep it open. And then over here I'm going to say it's a managed computer, and in here I need to put in a GUID number, which actually starts with a curly bracket like this, and then it has a sequence of numbers with dashes in it, and then you got to end it with a curly bracket. Even though I'm just going to put in some numbers over here and close this curly bracket, and you will notice that the next button is not lit up simply because I do not have the right format for this number. So what you can do is find out your computer's GUID number, which uniquely identifies your computer. This can be found by going into the BIOS, or sometimes some of the vendors such as Dell or IBM has it in their either in the BIOS settings, or you may also see a sticker on the side of the computer with this number listed on it. Usually they list the MAC number as well as this number. And again, this number is just to make sure that that particular computer is uniquely identified by the RISC server. Now, now if you have checked on this checkbox, let's go back over there. If you have selected this checkbox, and when the computer connects, the GUIDs will be checked, and only those computers that have a matching GUID over here will be given the image. So that's one just extra layer of security. So I'm going to close this, and that's all that we need to actually configure in RISC. And again, all those things were optional. We really didn't have to do that. I just want to make sure that you understand how these settings work, so that if you're not happy with these settings, you can go ahead and change it. Now, going back to our DC1, RISC was installed on the E drive into a folder that is shared as REMINST, and the name of the folder is remote install. And in there is a folder called admin, and all the administrative tools are over here. Okay, so we actually created a floppy disk by using this tool called Remote Boot Floppy Generator, RBFG for short. And now in this particular lab, we're going to use a next tool called RipPrep, also known as Remote Installation Preparation Tool, but not yet. Okay, but I just want to show you that that tool is in here. Let me see if I can position the screen a little bit better. I'll try to do so. That particular program is in remote install admin i386 folder. Now our images are actually in remote install setup And in setup, there is a folder called English, there's a folder called images, and here's the first image that is created for us, namely win2000.pro. Okay, now we are ready to set up our second image. Now, in order to do that, what we need to do is the following. We need to actually visit a computer that has Windows 2000 Professional installed. Remember, RIS in Windows 2000 Server supports only Windows 2000 Professional. So what you do is you completely install a client computer with the appropriate operating system. In our case, we have used Windows 2000 Professional as that system. Once you have installed that system, go ahead and install all the applications. So what I've done is I've taken the liberty of going ahead and offline installing these two applications, Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel. Actually, what I did was install Microsoft Office XP, but I just selected those two applications. So here we go. I have Microsoft XP running. When I say Microsoft XP, what I mean is actually Windows XP. So I'm going to go to the help screen and show you over here. This is the Microsoft version of XP, or this is Word XP, also known as Word 2002. So what I've done is I've installed this application. In other words, what I'm trying to simulate is the following, that this particular computer actually has two different applications installed, Microsoft Windows XP, Microsoft Office XP, and in there I've selected these two applications, and of course we have also installed Symantec PC Anywhere application on this computer. So what I'm trying to say is the following. What you can do is you can actually go to one of these computers and prepare a desktop client that includes the operating system, which is Windows 2000 Professional in this case, and then go ahead and install all the applications that the client would need. Okay, so if this computer is going to be used in the accounting department, go ahead and install Microsoft Office XP. If you want the accounting package, let's say this computer uses, this client uses QuickBooks as the accounting package, go ahead and install that. Install any other programming tools if you need to. I've installed PC Anywhere on this. Install other utilities such as Adobe Acrobat or even WinZip if you want to. So in other words, what you would like to do is create a complete client desktop, and then we're going to take a picture or an image of that desktop. So in order to prepare this desktop, you will install the operating system and all the other applications that the user on this computer would require. So I have done that. Once you do that, now you're ready to take the image. In order to take the image, I need to run the program called RipPrep. Now if you recall, the program RipPrep is not on the client. It's actually on the server in the share called remote install. So what I need to do is the following, and this is a key step. Please make a note of this. Do not actually go to DC1 and then I'm just going to perform this activity in the incorrect manner so that you understand clearly that I should not be doing this. So do not go to DC1 and in there go to the remote install folder, the admin folder, and then run RipPrep from there. That is not the correct way of doing this. What I need to do is run this program but from the client. And I cannot copy this program from here to the client either. I have to actually connect to the RIS server and run this program. So the way you do that is the following. I'm going to minimize the screen. We will go back to our client connection, and then over here what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the run and then connect to domain controller or the RIS server, which is DC1. That is exactly why remote installation services configuration was shared. It is shared as REMINST, so I'm going to double click on this, and then I'm going to double click on the folder called admin, and in there I should find a folder called i386. Again, I'm going to double click on it and I'm going to find the application that I need. By double clicking on this application, I'm going to do the following. What's going to happen is that it's going to take an image of this computer, namely the client computer, and it's going to transfer all the files from the client to the server, making a second image on the server. So once again, at this point on the server I had one image. Now it's going to take the image of the client and actually take all the files that is from the client and actually transfer it to the server. Okay, so going back to our network diagram over here, let's see if I can show you that diagram. Here we go. So what it's going to do is it's going to take the image of this computer and actually transfer it to the RIS server. Once it is on the RIS server, I'll have my second image. If you recall, the first image is Windows 2000 Professional only. The second image actually has Windows 2000 Professional along with all the applications that I have installed on the client computer. So let's start that process. So I'm going to connect to our client one more time, and now I'm going to run the RipPrep tool. Once I start this tool, it's going to walk me through the steps by running a wizard. So I'm going to click on the next button. Now it wants to know what is the name of the RIS server. It guessed it correctly. It is DC1. I'm going to click on the next button. Now it wants to know the name of the folder in which this particular image will be created. So I'm going to call it W2K CLNT. Okay, so it's going to create a folder called Windows 2000 Client. I'm going to click on the next button, and now it wants to know the friendly description. If you recall over here, you need to type exactly what you expect the client to see, or you expect the users who are going to use the who are going to use the RIS process to see, so that they can clearly identify which image they're installing. So what I'm going to do over here is type Windows 2000 with Office XP, and then over here I'm going to briefly describe this image contains so that the user who's going to use this image to deploy the client knows exactly what is contained in this particular image, of what is part of this package. And what else did we have? We had PC Anywhere. Okay, so that is a this is descriptive enough. And then click on the next button. Now it's wanting to know that there are other services and programs running, which is PC host, and just letting me know that, you know what, it's not a good idea to have this application running before you proceed ahead. And I'm going to shut it down, but I just want to make sure you see the screens that have come up on the client wizard before I stop our remote desktop connection, or rather the PC Anywhere connection on this computer. So I'm going to click on the next button and say, okay, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. And now it's giving me the summary screen that tells me that I'm going to create a folder called this, and in that folder will be the image that will be created for this, whose friendly name will be this. Okay, I'm going to click on the next button, and now once I click on next, it's going to actually start transferring the files from the client to the server. Now it is imperative that I close the connection to PC Anywhere, otherwise it may disrupt this process. So what I'm going to do is close the PC Anywhere connection, but what's going to happen is it's going to copy all these files and then eventually shut down the computer. So I'm going to close this connection, and then wait for the image to be created. Once the image is created, what we will do is, here we go, I just lost the connection. Once the image is created, what we will notice is that when we go to DC1, I can take you over there, but I won't show you everything at this point because the image is not yet created. And we go to the setup folder. In there will be a second folder created. The folder is already created, but I don't want to go inside the folder because at this point the files are being copied over to this folder. So now we have two folders: Windows 2000 Professional, which simply has the Windows 2000 Professional operating system, which also serves as the base image, and this one has Windows 2000 Professional plus all the other applications installed on it. Now, you do not have a choice of creating this directly. Some of you may be thinking, why not just go ahead and do this? In other words, why not just do riprep straight? Well, it is not possible, and here's why. If you recall, one of the things in Windows 2000 servers RIS installation was what was known as the SIS service, also known as Single Instance Store Service. What the service does is the following. You need to create the first image, which has to be Windows 2000 Professional. Riprep is actually treated as an optional thing that you need to do. Once you create the first image, now the RIS server already has the files to install Windows 2000 Professional. Now when it creates the second image, which is nothing but a combination of Windows 2000 Professional plus the applications, what will happen is that as the image is being transferred from the client to the server, it will look at the file, and if the file already exists over here in this image, it will actually not copy that file, because basically it knows that, well, I already have the files from here, so it's going to treat this as the base image. Whatever this particular image does not have, it will only copy those files. This is also known as the difference or the incremental image. In other words, if the file already exists over here, it does not need to copy that file again. If the file is not there, it will actually copy it over here. So if you really think about it, the difference between this image and this image is simply the applications. So what it is actually now doing is transferring all the files that were actually created or installed as part of the installation of the image itself. That is why you always need this base image. So by default, this image is created for Windows 2000 Professional, and then all the clients are installed over here as additional images, and then these additional images are nothing but incremental or differential images between this one and this one. So in other words, at this point, all the files that were installed when we installed Windows, Microsoft Office XP and PC Anywhere are being copied at this time on this particular folder. So what I'm going to do is take a little pause over here. As soon as the image is done copying, then I'll go through the steps once again to show you how this image can be deployed to the clients in our network. So I'm going to take a pause over here and let the rip-rep process finish itself, and then I'll join you once again. Welcome back. The image just finished copying, so let's go to DC1, and in there we will go to the E drive and check out the new image that was created in the setup folder, English, Images. Here was the new folder that was created for us, and in there is the i386 folder, and here are the files that were needed in order to set up the applications. That is basically the difference file between the first one and the second one. Okay, so this image is now set up for a client computer, and now in order to use the image we'll follow exactly the same steps as before. So I have done that. I'm doing this on the side over here. So I'm going to start a computer with the floppy disk in that we created using the remote boot floppy generator program. Once the computer restarts, it's going to load the driver for the NIC card and then try to obtain the IP address from the DHCP server. Once the IP address is successfully obtained from the DHCP server, you need to very quickly press the F12 key. At that time, it will contact the RISC server and then transfer the client installation wizard file by means of the TFTP server. So here you can see the TFTP client being loaded, and then the moment you press the F12 key, it shows you the screen for the client installation wizard. It will then run you through the wizard, and then the first thing it will do is ask you to authenticate into the RISC server. You will do so by logging in as the administrator with the password of password, and here's the domain name benbrady.com, and you will also see that it will tell you clearly that you're connected to DC1. And then once that is done, you have successfully logged in. This is where the screen will vary from the first screen. When I created the lab for this particular video, I had taken the screenshot at that time. You will now see, sorry about that, you will now see the names of your images. So if you recall, the very first image, or our base image as we called it, was the Microsoft Windows XP Professional image, and then the second one is a Windows XP Professional with Windows Office XP Professional. So as I said, when I created the lab book, I had copied the screen. When you log on using the methods that I've shown you, you will see two screens. You will see two lines in the same screen, Windows 2000 Professional and Windows 2000 Professional with Microsoft Office XP. So you basically select the right image, and then based on that, it will tell you that it's going to actually format the whole hard disk and then go on. All the steps that I've showed you before, I've already showed you in the last video, the only difference being the screen. I just wanted to show you the steps one more time so that I can show you the picture of the screen. So over here is where you'll be able to select the appropriate image for what you're trying to deploy. Once you're done with that, once again your hard disk will get deleted, and then the process will continue, and then all the files will start getting copied, and you will have, this time you will have a client that has Windows 2000 Professional along with Microsoft Office XP as well as PC Anywhere. So all the applications as well as the operating system is now installed on the client. Now going back to remote installation services, as you saw that this is a great way of actually installing client operating systems and applications on PCs. However, this method RISC has a few drawbacks, and here are some of them that you should note. To begin with, the only operating system that is supported by the RISC server in Windows 2000 is Windows 2000 Professional. In Server 2003, you have a little bit more support, Windows 2000 Professional, Windows XP Professional, as well as Windows Server 2003 as well. Okay, however, in Windows 2000, the only one that is supported is Windows 2000 Professional. So once again, if you would like to install other kinds of clients in your network, RISC is not a great method for you. So that's the first restriction. The second restriction is the hard disk itself. As you saw that RISC does not allow you to create partitions on your hard disk, and sometimes that may not be an appropriate way of actually installing operating systems and clients on computers. Sometimes you would like to create a certain partition, and then the other partitions are used to actually store data. So if you would like to do something like that, RISC is not a good choice for you. And third, and this may be a huge restriction depending on the kind of environment that you have, what happens is the following, and this applies only to riprep. In other words, when you're trying to create an image that has the operating system as well as the application. In riprep, what happens is the following. When you're taking the image of riprep, it expects the client computer to have the same size of hard disk as the server. Okay, in other words, if you recall, on server we actually had two partitions. Our two partitions were this was about 8 gigabytes, and this one we created was 4 gigabytes, but my actual hard disk is actually 40 gigabytes. So once again, let me close this and show you this in a moment. If I were to go over here and then go to disk management, on DC1 disk management, this shows that I have a hard disk about 37.27 gigabytes, which is around 40 gigabytes. My hard disk is as big as 40 gigabytes. Now typically on a server, your hard disk on a server will be much larger than the hard disk on the client. When you're using RipRep, and once again it applies to RipRep only, the client computer's hard disk must be equal to or greater than that of the RISC server. Once again, not the size of the partition, the size of the entire hard disk, even though most of the space on the hard disk may be unused or unpartitioned. So once again, the client's hard disk must be equal to or greater than in size than the server's hard disk. So that creates a huge potential, because chances are your RISC server, the hard disk on a server is much greater than that on the client. So please be aware of this restriction. Of course, there's a way of going around. If you recall that you had to actually create the image and the RISC installation on a separate partition, well, what you can do is on the RISC server, purchase a hard disk that is about 2 to 3 gigabytes, maybe about 10 gigabytes, something that will be equal to or less than the size of the hard disk on the client computers. Typically nowadays, most client computers have at least 20 gigabyte of hard disk, if not more. So I would purchase a hard disk that is about 10 gigabytes and put it on DC1 and make sure that RISC is installed over there, so that this particular restriction is not a factor in our installation. Okay, but that becomes a huge restriction itself. Last but not the least, in order for RISC to work, you must have a complete Windows environment. That means you must have Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, and RISC. Okay, this must be a server, you must have Active Directory installed, and so forth. In other words, you cannot use RISC to actually create images and then take the image, let's say from a CD-ROM, and then put it on the client and then get the image installed in that manner. It will not work. It requires the presence of Active Directory. If you have a workgroup environment where you do not have a domain controller, once again you cannot use RISC, simply because Active Directory is not there, and DNS, DHCP may or may not be there as well in your environment. Okay, or if you're using any other operating system such as Novell or Linux, or if you're using Windows 98 or Windows Millennium, again you cannot use RISC, simply because those kinds of operating systems are not supported. So there are a lot of restrictions. However, out of the box, RISC is a great way of installing client and is a great way of installing the operating system as well as application on client computers. There are better methods, and in the next video I'm going to show you how imaging can be done using the industry standard software known as Symantec Ghost. The only problem is that now you have to purchase Ghost, which can be expensive for a larger network, and now you have to configure a third-party software to actually get the imaging done. Whereas RISC is a free service that is included as part of Windows Server 2000 as well as Server 2003. So bearing these restrictions, RISC is a great way. If you have a network that has a pure Windows environment, and if you don't mind if the client installation takes a few minutes longer than it does in Ghost, actually a lot more. Ghost typically takes between 10 to 15 minutes. A typical installation using RISC is about 35 to 40 minutes. So if you don't mind those restrictions, RISC can be a great way of getting clients installed with the operating system as well as the applications. So this should also conclude our video on remote installation services. Remote installation services can be used in two different ways: to install just the base operating system, which is Windows 2000 Professional, or you can use the RipRep method to install the base operating system as well as applications. I thank you very much for watching this video, and I hope to see you very soon in a different video in Active Directory.